He look like all the rain from Manchester. Don't pan that the frog.
How are you doing today? You okay?
Fine, my dear grandson.
Thanks for taking the time out to talk to me. I know we've been talking for, well, I've been promising for a while that I'm going to sit down with you and do an interview. So sorry it's taken this long, but anyway, nothing happens before it's time. So, let's get into it. Tell us your full name and where you were born.
My full name is Esme Mildred Case Linton. I was born in the district of Armadale in the parish of St. Anne, 1932, the 31st of March, in the island of Jamaica.
Where were your parents from?
Well, my mother was from Armadale district, but my father was from Glasgow, St. Anne, the same parish like my mother.
Tell me what your earliest childhood memory was growing up there.
Wow. My earliest childhood memory. I lived with my grandparents, John and Rebecca Hall. And after about 4 years with them, my mother took me with her to another district by the name of Abuka Wood, where I stayed with her until I was about 6 or 6.5. She took me to Eccleston School. That was the first school I went to. But when I went, they would not take me because I was not the fully age, which was 7, to go into school. So I was taken home by her and had to wait until the September of that same year when I attended Charlton School at the age of 7.
Do you remember when you actually started Charlton School? Do you remember your first day at all, or do you have any memories of that school?
Yes, I remember fully well. The first day I went, I learned to spell my name and also the name of my district where I was from. And I also learned some scripture verses, which was Genesis chapter 8. While the earth remained. It was about the seasons, so I stop at that.
What was it like, you being a 7-year-old child and going to school at that point in time?
Well, I was very happy then because most of us were from the same district. We were very loving to each other and kind, and everybody get on very well.
Okay. Did the same apply for the district that you lived in? What was it like growing up in that district at that point in time?
Life was very hard. Food and clothing were very rare, so we had to be satisfied with what we got. And I did not have a father because my father died when I was 1.5 years old. So my mother, she had to take care of me after the death of my father. And so she found life very hard. She had to work in various homes, and it was so hard for her.
Did your mum have any help or any family and friends during that period? Because like you said, your dad had passed away.
Yeah.
Did you have any input from family? Did people kind of band together to help you and your mum out at the time?
The only help we have was leaving me with my grandmother and my grandfather, my Aunt Winnie and my Uncle Charlie, who would give my mother food for a night's dinner, etc. That was all the help she had.
Tell me about the memories that you have of your... you said it was your grandparents that helped look after you.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about them and how much of an impact they had on your life.
They were the foundation of my life. They were Christian people, and so they always taught me about the Lord and about church and Sunday school. I did not go to church or Sunday school at the time, but in the home where we live, my grandma and grandpa, they always read the Bible to me, and we always sing really nice hymns. They always teach me hymns. So I knew hymns and learned to sing from an early age, and they always taught me about the Lord Jesus Christ and teach me what was right from what was wrong.
So as you said, money and food was like, it wasn't in abundance back then, but you still had like positive role models in your life and your grandparents at that point in time.
Yes, very, very good, strong Christian role model they were. Taught me all good things.
Okay. What about any of your other relatives? Were there any cousins or anything that were in your life at that point in time?
There were lots of cousins because my grandparents, they had 13 children. And from those 13 children, there were lots of cousins from my aunts. And so, most of the time, we were all together at my grandparents' home because we lived near to each other. And so they always visited my grandparents' home. We shared whatsoever we had among each other. My grandparents, they always have a lot of corn and sweet potatoes. So they always cook and give us all. Although we did not have meat and so on, but they always cook and give to us to eat, and our stomach was always filled and we were always happy and playful and so on.
For those who've never been before in the district that you grew up with, what was the landscape like for a young child growing up in Jamaica back then? Like, what do you remember most in terms of the weather and the seasons and stuff like that?
It was very, very nice. It was a lovely district. It was a hilly district. For we lived right up in the Dry Harbour Mountains, which was very rural. Anybody who visit, apart from the hard life, like most of the time, they wouldn't have a lot of food to eat. we have food at different seasons. Corn come in different seasons, sweet potatoes, yams, and so on. So most of the seasons, when the crops were not ready for fruition, then we had to suffer. We mostly buy like flour from the shops or cornmeal. It was a very nice, loving district. Everybody loved one another. And especially the children. We always have a lot of drought, so we always go far to the public tanks to collect the water. The rivers were very far. The government always collect water from the rivers in trucks to take up to the Dryaba Mountains to be like shared out to the various people who live in the districts. And we, the younger children that were able to go to collect the water, we always join together, and we always find it a pleasure to go and collect the water and take it home to our parents. By the time we reach home to our various homes, most of the water was splashed out of the container in which we carried it in. But otherwise, it was very sunny, and there were lots of fruits during fruit time, and that was one of the things the children always loved, to eat the fruits and make ourselves very happy and comfortable.
For those that don't know, have you got any recollection of ghost, or should we say duppy stories growing up as a kid? Do you remember the first time you ever encountered one?
Yes, I do.
Tell me about that.
As a child, lived in the district of Abuka Wood with my mother. I would more so call it an angel at that time, because Duppy, I was told that some of them were harmful. But this incident in which I'm going to tell you about, I was living in Abuka Wood with my mother, and at the time she lived with a man. They always go to the field, and they always come home and cook very late. But they always send me to the shops. The shops are not like shops like here. It's like a far way from where I live.
How long would it have taken you to get to the shop from Abuka Wood?
From where I lived at a place called Building in Abuka Wood, I would have to go at least about 5 miles.
5 miles, and would you do that on your own?
I do it on my own, and at that time I was about 6.5 or 7. And they always send me to the shops.
So how long would that have taken you to do as a round trips, to go from home to the shop and then come back?
To go to the shops, I have to walk through a deep gully. And that gully would be like where the train them drive through. Tunnel.
Oh, like I know what you mean, like an underground. Is that what you mean?
No, it was not like an underground. And I would walk through a dark place and go down through a gully like a tunnel. On one side was what is called a sinkhole. It's a deep hole where goats are so falling and they don't come out back. And on the other side were like a hillside. I noticed that whenever time I start to go to the shop, it was like I saw the image of a girl about my age at the time. I could not see her face, but I know she had like a hat with a halo over around her head. And this image would come, and as if she would be waiting there for me. And the minute she saw me coming, it was as if she would turn and take the lead to lead me right down through the gully and right out to the other end of the road where I can join the next road to go to the shop. I have never seen her face, but I always see her walking before me with this halo around her head. And I used to talk to the image because I used to think she was a person, and I used to call her name Pele. When I come to this country and heard the name of Pele, it was not strange to me because I have already used this name Pele as a young child. And Pele was my friend. She goes with me on these journeys, and they were very fearful journeys. I always be afraid, but it so happened that after a while I was not afraid at all of going to the shops, because I know Pele was always going with me and so on. So I wasn't afraid. I always have Pele to be with me everywhere. That was a very good angel, I would say. But concerning ghost, or what you would call Duppy back home, I have heard their manifestation, in various places that I stayed. I have heard them and afraid of them and feel their manifestation, or very fearful, because there were times when I could feel that fear, like something is there. My hair would stand up and that sort of way.
Because you've told me about that wasn't a duppy, that was almost like a guardian angel that was protecting you.
The Duppy manifestation happened in my district. One night, this was one of the most fearful things I've ever seen. I used to go to church. By this now, I was about 12. And I used to go to the meeting house to church. And one night I was coming from church. Some of the neighbors, we were able to walk through what is called their yard, like a track. And there was this neighbor whose yard I could walk through. But that night, there was a young man. He always goes to the church, and sometimes he accompanied me home to my house, and he would turn back to go up back to his house. And this night he followed me home, And while he followed me home to my gate, while I was going, I saw going, like I was going into my gate now, I saw this big animal like a cow, and it lies down, and the moon was shining. It was full moon, and it was bright, and it was shining, and this big big red animal like a bull, and it laid down, and it has its eyes on the moon, looking on the moon, and it has this shine like what you wear around your neck. You know, it has a shine chain, very shine chain, like a piece of silver chain, and you know, it rattles all the time. And when I looked at this bull, it was looking at the moon, the full moon. And the young fellow that carried me home, his name was Jimmy. He always carried me home from meeting, and he had to turn back to go back to his house. But luckily, I always come through that way where the bull was watching the moon every night. When I go to church, coming home on my own, I always walk through that yard and come. But I didn't come there that night. Otherwise, I would have come in full contact with it. So I only saw the big bull lying down watching the moon, and it didn't see me. And when I saw it, I just burst the door and rushed in. And my mother was there at the house, and she asked what this is, and I said, there is a big cow lying and watching the moon. And she was able to peep through the crevice of the door and saw the thing, and told me it's what they call rolling calf. That's what they use in the days of slavery. They used to use those as ghosts to frighten the slaves. But that night, after we went in, we could hear when the bull got up. We didn't see it, but we hear when it got up, for you could hear the chain rattling, and it galloped all over the whole area where everybody lived, that everybody could hear it the next morning and was asking questions.
So it was like the talk of the village the following day, because everyone
Oh yes,
heard it.
everybody.
Everybody
was asking, have you heard last night? Have you? And also, the house where we lived, the woman of the house, she died in child's birth, and she was buried at the bottom. And at certain time, the whole district.
When you say she was buried at the bottom, do you mean she was buried at the bottom of your garden?
Yeah.
Right.
And so the whole district, at certain time of the year, when she was buried, because they buried the dead baby with her. And for the baby, after she died in child's birth, the baby, they kept the baby until the baby died little after. And they buried the dead baby in the same, on her stomach. So at certain time of the year, you walk in that district, you could hear the baby cry, and everybody would get up the next morning and ask, did you hear the the baby last night, you know, and like you could hear the mother.
Everyone would have known that was the lady who
Oh
passed
yes,
away at child.
everybody. And also there was another woman died in the district, and she died on an, you know, terrible death. And she always walked. She was like what you would call a night woman. She go to the road every single night. And then she died. I think she just died suddenly, you know. I
Like
think
a sudden death.
like a sudden death.
Okay.
And she used to go out to the road every single night. And you know, she had a man. She was living with a man, but the man was in America at the time. And she always get things from America for her. She should have opened a shop. She uses the man money to open a shop for one of the men that she had a first child with. And she was preparing to open the shop and put that man in that shop while the other poor man was in America. And then she should have opened the shop like, say, the Friday night to be open the Saturday morning. And she went out the Friday night. And while I don't know what happened, but she collapsed and was rushed to the hospital, and she died in the hospital a little after. So she didn't get to open the shops at all.
And was she somebody else that used to make appearances, like almost as a
She
duppy?
always make appearances. Everybody hear her because she would bawl all the way from the hospital right in through the district. And everybody was afraid of her name was Sylvie. And they would ask, did you hear? And you know, she used to have a high-pitched perfume. Wherever it is, you could smell her. And everybody was asking, did you hear Miss Sylvie last night? Did you hear her? Did you hear her? So there were, you know, and you know, they bury people right in the roadside. So people was always afraid and say they see this and they see that and so. But that was my personal experience of what I saw, you know.
You mentioned the rolling calf.
Yeah.
And the other sort of duppy situations. Was there anyone in the districts who just didn't believe any of it, that they just
a lot of people never believe, but a lot believe. And there was another incident when I got married and lived at Armadale Yard with another duppy. Some of the nights my husband used to go. I always leave my daughter, that's Claudette, your mom, with my mother, her granny, down the other yard. And I went up to Armadale Yard was for me and your granddad to come home. He always worked as handyman. So he would be finished in the days. And I would go down. I went up the evening that we would go down back to my mother's house where we live. And when I went up there, the matron said he was not there. He's gone to the post office to collect the mails. So I could wait. But that was not true. He had not gone to collect any mails. But her husband had come down from Kingston. And she was afraid of her husband because her husband used to beat her up. Because her husband thought, you know, she used to keep the higher men from the department, the approved school in which she worked. She was a matron. And so I waited there for Handel until late in the night, and he didn't come. And while I was waiting, I lay on the bed and I turned my back like how I would turn my face to the wall. I heard the door open, and I heard like somebody would walk on the floor. You know, like when somebody step on the floor and you hear their shoes. And I thought it was him. And I was so upset that I just don't turn around. I said, I am here from when? I was talking to him there, I was saying, I was here from when? And he's only know you creeping. And, he didn't speak, but I could hear when, like when you're taking off your clothes.
Yeah.
And that was what he did. He took his clothes off as it was and threw it down and come in the bed. And I was in the bed and I was choking and I couldn't tell you what happened. That night I nearly died, and I was in such a condition until when the husband, who was Mrs. Tucker's husband, was coming down because he had to get the bus to go back to town in the morning. And while he was coming down the stairs, and some of the juvenile girls were coming down to make him breakfast, and Mrs. Tucker, I could hear the thing run right through the door. And I jumped up, and it was that time I knew it wasn't Handel who slept in the bed with me all the night. And when I told her, and all of them, and then the following night, the same thing happened to William. Something came.
And you have the similar experience.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah.
And they thought it was somebody who come to break the house, so all the juveniles were around looking for it. But I had a lot of, experience like those and so on.